This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello and welcome to Power Hour. I'm Gabriella Power. Thank you for your company. The President of Peace, Donald J. Trump, has pulled off a miracle. After 2 devastating and heartbreaking years, the Israel-Hamas war is over and all of the hostages are home.
Most beautifully of all, we have made peace together. And this week, against all odds, we have done the impossible and brought our hostages home.
Thank you, President Trump. It really is extraordinary. Of course, plenty of people have doubted him and are always quick to criticise him for all of his faults. But there's no question that Trump makes the impossible possible, and no other president could have done this. This is Donald Trump's most historic achievement, and he keeps showing the world that he's achieving breakthroughs that no other leader has been able to pull off through deal-making. He's brokered this peace deal in a way that has all the Arab countries on board. Of course, earlier this year, he took out Iran's nuclear facilities, something that US presidents have been talking about for years. And he's brought the hostages home. Even from here in Australia, you can see and feel how the people of Israel are so grateful to the president. This is the front page of the Jerusalem Post today. It reads, "God bless the peacemaker," with a photo of Donald Trump. Now, Trump is showing the world what peace through strength looks like because of him, because of his leadership, and of course the people around him like Steve Witkoff, Marco Rubio, Jared Kushner, and because of Israel. Right now there is peace in Gaza. On Saturday night, ahead of the president's arrival, around 100,000 people gathered at Hostage Square, which is now going to be renamed to Freed Square, as Special Envoy Steve Witkoff delivered this powerful speech.
We stand here tonight, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and people from every corner of the world, united by one shared prayer for peace. Tonight, we celebrate something extraordinary, a moment that many thought was impossible. Yet here we stand, living proof that when courage meets conviction, miracles can happen. A peace born not out of politics, but out of courage. The courage of those who refuse to give up hope.
And plenty of Israelis cheered, "Thank you, President Trump."
And to President Donald J. Trump.
Some in the crowd also rolled out a banner calling for Donald Trump to be given the Nobel Peace Prize, which he absolutely should have received. Even CNN was forced to report that there were plenty of people wearing MAGA caps.
And, of course, endless applause for President Trump. Endless applause for President Trump.
And when I was there, I even saw people wearing Make America Great Again hats in that crowd over at Hostage Square.
Others were also wearing red hats that say Trump the Peace President. And there is, of course, just so much emotion being felt in Israel and Gaza right now. And Steve Witkoff deserves an enormous amount of credit for this as well. And he described it as a blessing in his life.
What does this moment mean to you?
It's the moment of my life, a blessing in my life. And I couldn't be more thrilled to work for the greatest president out there, Donald J. Trump. He brought him home.
Because of Donald Trump, 20 hostages are finally home after 736 days in captivity. And among the 20 living hostages who returned home is Guy Gilboa Dalal. Now, he was 22 years old when he was captured by Hamas terrorists at the Nova Music Festival. While I was over in Israel last year, I spoke to his older brother, Gal Dalal, who described the last moment that they shared together at that festival.
At 6:15, he was already waiting for me. The interest jumped at me, kissed at me, sent a selfie to our mother. He was so happy.
His family received information that Guy was being starved and chained by Hamas, and Gal spoke about the toll that this has taken on their family.
You know, he's honestly my best friend. We see the same movies together. We play the same games together. We go to concerts together. And I missed him so much. I miss him more than anything. I would do anything to get him back. And I know I will see him again. I just wanted to happen soon, you know, thinking about him being subjected to physical, psychological, sexual abuse on a daily basis in the hands of terrorists. When he had nothing to do to this war, it's killing us as a family. You know, my mother, she don't sleep, she don't eat, she barely speak. My family cry all the time. They do what they can.
But Gal and his family never gave up hope that this day would finally come. And you can imagine the relief they are all feeling today after 2 long years. Guy is finally home. Watch this.
והשנים שיעברו לא ישאירו זיכרון וזה רק אני ואת, זה רק אני ואת היום. אתה בבית, אתה בבית. כשהכל נגמר חלמתי 1000 חלומות על כל מה שהספקתי ועל מה שלא. ואם אני ראוי, האם אני יכול להיות זה שירדם?
We are thinking of every family member reuniting with their loved ones today, and also those who lost loved ones over the past 2 years as the bodies of 28 hostages are being returned to Israel in coffins. And Israel releases almost 2,000 prisoners. Now, Donald Trump met with many of the returned hostages and their families before flying from Israel to Egypt, where he then met with world leaders and, of course, signed the ceasefire deal in Gaza, declaring at long last we have peace in the Middle East. Joining us now is writer and broadcaster Esther Kraku. Esther, thank you so much for joining us. US President Donald Trump is back in the US after his historic trip to the Middle East, where he pulled off an extraordinary achievement. While he was there, he met with Israeli leaders, he met with families of hostages, he of course flew to Egypt, met with the Egyptian president, met with dozens of world leaders and signed the Gaza peace deal. Now, he's back in the US in time to honour Charlie Kirk on Tuesday, but Esther, all 20 living hostages are now home. It is incredible to see after more than 700 days.
Yes, absolutely. And the hostages have been through hell these last 2 years. I think we can all agree that Donald Trump has achieved certainly what the previous administration would not have achieved, and what many countries in the West would have tried to achieve, but certainly didn't. And I think it speaks to the diplomatic tact of the Trump administration, and the fact that they were able to basically rally all the Arab leaders in particular to be in favor of the Gaza peace plan. I think what I find most telling, though, is all the people that have been wanting to see an end to this war and wanting to see an end to the carnage and some progression and some actual realization of some sort of deal, really not giving Donald Trump credit where credit is due. And I think that the term Trump derangement syndrome has never been more apt, because these are the kinds of stunts that they pull, and they really kind of nullify the arguments on any kind of policy level, because if you cannot recognize that something like this, these people that have been through absolute hell and carnage, this anti-Semitic hellhole in the ground in Gaza for over 2 years, if you cannot recognize what a feat Donald Trump's administration has achieved by bringing them home, by bringing those families relief, by seeing, you know, people that have been separated for 2 years reunited, if you cannot recognize that and say that Donald Trump has done something that is really kind of spectacular, regardless of your reservations of his other policy areas, then you're really quite a mentally unwell person. And you know, we saw this, all the world leaders that basically lined up, the Arab leaders as well, which is remarkable, the fact that they all endorsed this peace plan for Gaza. I mean, this is something that I dare to say only Trump could have achieved.
Agree.
And unfortunately, you know, the side that's supposed to be on the side of peace are really showing that really it wasn't about peace. It was just kind of rearing the anti-Semitic heads. And I wrote a piece last week saying I don't recognize the London that I grew up in, seeing you know, Jewish communities around the country saying that they feel unsafe. Many Jewish businesses had to close on Saturdays, their busiest commercial days in the capital in London, because of these what turned out to be basically hate marches and pro-Hamas demonstrations that have, you know, feigned being under the guise of progressing the pro-Palestinian cause. So I think, you know, regardless of where you stand, Donald Trump absolutely should be congratulated for this. And many people who are genuinely concerned for the hostages and for the state of this war are breathing a sigh of relief.
Oh, you're absolutely right. It's been very telling to see who wants to give Donald Trump credit and who refuses to give credit to Donald Trump. I mean, plenty of Democrats. You've got Barack Obama, Elizabeth Warren just refusing to even mention Donald Trump's name. And you mentioned you don't even recognise London anymore. It's a similar situation here in Sydney. Just over the weekend, there were more pro-Palestine demonstrations after a ceasefire agreement had been reached. It says a lot that there are parts of these demonstrations which is really just about Jew hatred, unfortunately. Now, it's been interesting to watch lefty politicians try and take some credit for Donald Trump's work here. UK Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson insists that the UK should be getting a fair bit of credit for Donald Trump's peace plan. Just listen to this.
We have played a key role behind the scenes in shaping this. It's right that we do so because it's in all of our interest, including our own national interest, that we move to a lasting peace in the region.
Well, when you say behind the scenes, like what? I mean, it seems to everybody else in the world that this has been done by Trump and the Israelis and Hamas. What part did we play?
These are complex matters of diplomacy that we are involved in, but we do welcome and recognise the critical role that the American government played in moving us to this point.
Esther, the US ambassador to Israel, has called her delusional, and he's not wrong about that.
Certainly not. And I think if you noticed Trevor Phillips' face while she made that preposterous statement, he couldn't actually look her in the eye and keep a straight face when he said this. And I don't think that makes for a good Sunday morning telly. But it's completely ludicrous. I mean, the fact that, you know, this government decided to recognize the state of Palestine, God knows where, because it doesn't even meet the qualifications for a state. It doesn't have a fixed territory. It certainly doesn't have a functioning government in any regard. But the fact that this government decided to pander to left-wing extremists in Britain and do that, which clearly was against the interest of any actual lasting peace, and was really annoyed the American Donald Trump's administration and Israel as well, shows that they weren't really interested in actually playing a serious hand in peace.
No.
And this is the delusion that this government operates under. Bridget Phillipson, who, again, if anyone knows her role as Education Secretary in Britain, knows that she's basically rolling back any significant reforms that the last Conservative government made with education in Britain, which is probably the only aspect of public policy that Britain isn't failing in entirely. It's not surprising that this is the kind of stuff that would come from her. But Mike Huckabee was right. You know, the US ambassador to Israel said, of course, Britain didn't have a role in this. You know, we're dealing with a completely neutered government, at the head of which is Keir Starmer, who can't tell his arm from his leg. And David Lammy, as Foreign Secretary, has just basically been an embarrassment to Britain on the world stage. If he's not handing out sovereign territory in the form of Chagos Islands, he's recognizing and rewarding Hamas for carrying out attacks on October 7th, which is basically what the recognition of Palestine turned out to be. So, you know, again, this government is an embarrassment. I mean, you could just see from the disposition of Keir Starmer when he was behind Donald Trump, after Donald Trump said these world leaders basically came at 20 minutes notice. He really just made him kiss the ring. And for any Brit with a sense of national pride, it's an embarrassment to watch.
No, and it's embarrassing for us here in Australia as well. Australia made the same move, recognising Palestine at the UN General Assembly, of course, while hostages were still being held by Hamas. Let's look at the UK, and the Home Office is offering a communications expert or spin doctor up to £91,000 a year to help convince the public that Labor is tackling the small boats crisis. And to decide as to whether they are tackling the boat crisis or not, let's just look at the numbers. The total number of arrivals since the start of the year is more than 35,000. That's up 33% on the same period last year and on par with the record in 2022. I mean, Esther, I don't think a spin doctor is really what the UK needs, maybe addressing the crisis.
I think they'd have a better chance of making everyone deaf and dumb and blind before they could actually hire a spin doctor that's miraculous enough in talent to convince the public what they're seeing is actually not reality. And they're taking a leaf out of Tony Blair's playbook, trying to recreate sort of an Alistair Campbell situation where they hire a spin doctor. But you can only play that card once. You can only convince the public that the Iraq War is just once. Unfortunately, people are seeing these boats coming across. They're seeing the impacts on their communities. You know, communities that have these migrant hotels filling up areas around the country are also rising up. So you can't hire anyone to do a Houdini act and pretend like what they see before their very eyes is not true. And it's really quite a shame because it didn't need to get this bad. I mean, boat crossings, like you said, are up a third from what they were last year. But the fact is, Keir Starmer ran last year on the promise that the adults were back in the room and the small boats crisis will be tackled. And he cancelled the Rwanda scheme because he called it a gimmick, even though the previous Conservative government had actually hired Australian consultants to basically mimic the Australian model from back in the early 2010s, so we could get this crisis under hand. And nothing has happened. And so now what they're basically they're looking towards the Belgians, whose new prime minister is also very keen on tackling this, and the Italians and the Spanish and the Greeks to actually tackle this, because it's very clear that this government doesn't have a handle on the small boat situation. And what he's trying to do, rolling out this digital ID as a way to kind of weed out people that don't have a right to work in the UK, again, is completely tone deaf. People are not working illegally in the UK because employers that are paying them below minimum wage rates forget that they're illegal. They do it because they can get away with it. And the way to stop it is to basically stop the flow and make sure that no one who comes into Britain illegally can have a right to claim asylum, and certainly not to bring their family over, which is a sham that has actually been going on for years now, believe it or not. There are common sense ways to do this, and yet the government is not interested. Instead, they're throwing away more public money on spin doctors and trying to convince the public that what's before their very eyes is not actually what's happening.
Well, more public money. Let's look at what else they're spending money on. As we know, many parts of the world have really moved on from this woke era that we saw really peak, I think, in 2020, 2021. I mean, in America, woke seems pretty much dead, but not in Britain. It's been revealed that Britain's public sector is splurging £70 million a year on woke diversity officers. This is according to an investigation by The Mail on Sunday. So $70 million a year, Esther, on DEI. I'm not sure if that's the best use of taxpayer money.
Well, it's certainly not, especially because not a single person can actually highlight the public benefit to having people in these roles. I mean, we keep hearing that the government is tight on money and that they have to take winter fuel payments away from pensioners who have paid into the country their entire lives. But somehow there's money to pay DEI officers 60, 70, 80,000 pound salaries to do God knows what. And now this is not a surprise. I mean, in terms of public sector wastage, we see tens of billions of pounds being wasted on quangos and all of these think tanks and these organizations that are basically cronies of whoever's in power at the time. But again, this rubs to the core of the fact that we're being told that we need to have our taxes put up, that energy bills are ridiculously high because somehow we're saving the planet, and there's no money to help people that actually need to be on welfare, for example, like pensioners who can't just go out and get a second job or find a way to pay high energy bills. But somehow there's tens of millions of pounds to waste on people that literally have no public benefit. It's a complete offense. And these DEI officers that have been uncovered in this investigation are across the public sector. So we're talking the NHS, the police, the civil service, education. It's not just isolated to one public sector department. It is the entirety of the public sector, which is a complete insult to the British public. We're told our taxes have to go up, but somehow there's money to pay for these useless roles.
Finally, Esther, the BBC has had to pause its diversity workshops focused on transgender and LGBT topics whilst reviewing their compliance with the Supreme Court ruling back in April. Now, the BBC is examining whether the training materials correctly define sex in accordance with the ruling. And of course, the Supreme Court determined that sex means biological sex rather than gender identity chosen by individuals. Now, this legal clarification has prompted the BBC to reassess its approach to diversity, Esther.
Well, leave it to the BBC to need the Supreme Court to tell it that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and you can't interchange the two, especially in terms of public law and space. But it's not surprising, because if this ruling hadn't happened, believe it or not, what would have happened is the BBC would have continued to be part of the entire ecosystem that would continue to peddle the lie that somehow, because of how you identify, you are entitled to be in spaces that are dedicated to the same sex. And in the case of women, we have to bear the brunt, because we are the ones who are having our rape shelters invaded by men who claim to be women. We are the ones whose prisons are being invaded by men who claim to be women. We are the one whose bathrooms are being invaded by men who claim to be women. And like J.K. Rowling said, unless you are someone who doesn't have access to millions and millions of pounds like the Emma Watsons of the world, you will actually come to face this if you ever have to use, for example, a council-run swimming pool facility that's now pandering to this left-wing gender ideology. And the same thing applies to rape centers, for example, and shelters for women and prisons. We remember the infamous case of Isla Bryson in Scotland, a male rapist who somehow found his way into a female prison because of the ludicrous gender ID laws in Scotland. So thankfully, the BBC is starting to take this seriously. But I think what I suspect is actually happening is they're trying to stave off any lawsuits that would happen if they decided to push this gender ideology nonsense despite the Supreme Court ruling.
Writer and broadcaster Esther Kraku, thank you so much for joining us. It's time for Media Meltdowns, and even though President Trump has pulled off the impossible, ending the war between Israel and Hamas and securing the return of all of the hostages, there are plenty of lefties and Democrats with so much TDS they cannot bring themselves to thank the president who did this. Former President Barack Obama posted about it on X and refused to mention Donald Trump's name. His post was just all waffle. It was so pathetic, even CNN has slammed him for it.
President Obama put out this post talking about the peace deal and the prospects of it, and Don Jr. responded to it. I'll finish it for you. Thank you, Donald Trump. Honestly, it's not unfair to say if President Obama's going to write a whole post about a peace deal, maybe he should acknowledge the president that brokered it.
It's not often you have CNN agreeing with Don Jr., but pay attention to the Democrats who refuse to credit the president right now. I mean, Elizabeth Warren also wrote a post on X that was just as ridiculous, refusing to say Donald Trump's name, and she clearly missed the memo. If there's a time that you should probably give the president credit, it's maybe when he ends wars. Even Hillary Clinton praised the president for the peace deal.
It's a really significant first step, and I really commend President Trump and his administration, as well as Arab leaders in the region, for making the commitment to the 20-point plan and seeing a path forward for what's often called the day after.
Now, Kamala Harris was asked about it, and even though you can see it in her eyes, it pains her, but she credits the president for his incredible work in bringing peace to the Middle East.
When this airs, President Trump will be on his way to the Middle East. They have this deal between Israel and Palestine. Both former Secretaries of State Hillary Clinton and Antony Blinken have commended President Trump for the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Do you agree with them? Should he be commended?
Look, I don't think that we should hold in credit where it's due. I mean, first of all, let me say about that deal, I really do hope it becomes real and that the hostages are out, that Gaza is no longer being treated with such brutality of force, that aid goes in. And I commend the people who have been a part of this process. I'd commend the Qataris, the Egyptians, and the president.
There it is. Joining us now is James Morrow. James, thank you so much for joining us again. I mean,
pleasure.
There are still Democrats like Elizabeth Warren, Barack Obama, who have no interest in thanking the president for his incredible work. And even Kamala Harris does right there, but you can tell she really, really does not want to. And are you surprised?
Well, I'm not surprised at all, but there's a couple of more points that need to be made about this. I mean, number one, just watching Kamala Harris there, think about the bullet that the world, not just the U.S., but the world dodged there, right? Because if she had won that presidential election, she would be president. And I'll tell you what, those hostages, they'd still be in captivity.
100%.
This peace deal would not have happened. And the United States would be pursuing a retread, a third term, or really a fourth term, of the Obama legacy of a failed foreign policy. And that's why I thought the Barack Obama tweet that you referenced before was so interesting. Because what has happened now, and what Donald Trump started with the Abraham Accords in his first term of office, and then has continued with this peace deal here, has been a complete and entire refutation of the Barack Obama foreign policy. That foreign policy, let's not forget what that was about. That foreign policy was about reorienting the entire Middle East and strengthening Iran. That's what the Iran deal was all about. Iran, the big sponsor of terrorism, of Hamas around the world, was given more power because they wanted to weight power away from America's historic ally, Israel. It was an insane idea, but that's what they did. So no wonder Barack Obama is so churlish about this. His life's work of reorienting America from Tel Aviv to Tehran has all come to nothing. And peace has been achieved, and he has been proved completely wrong. So no wonder he's so shirty about it.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on there, James. And hasn't it been amazing to watch the outpouring of love from Israelis for President Donald Trump? Because as you say, if Kamala Harris was elected, those hostages, well, they would still be in tunnels in Gaza. If it wasn't for this president, peace would not have been achieved. He was able to take out the Iran nuclear facilities, something that presidents have been talking about for years and years. I mean, Trump's deal-making efforts have been incredible. But back to the Israelis and how they are just showing so much love and respect for Donald Trump. Some have been waving the American flag just to express their gratitude. Watch this.
Why are you carrying an American flag? To thank President Trump who forced the Hamas and Israeli government to sign for ending that war and bringing up all the kidnapped.
What does it feel like today?
Very big emotion. I cannot do anything at home. So I put my shirt and came, so I was asking myself which flag I will take. So I took the American flag to thank from the beat of my heart to President Trump and to American people.
Oh, James, it's just amazing watching 20 living hostages be reunited with their families. I was glued to the TV last night as the president was addressing Parliament in Israel. But it's been amazing also to watch other countries and other leaders try and take credit for Donald Trump's work. There was a UK MP trying to say that the UK was really significant in this. And here in Australia, our Foreign Minister, Penny Wong, also in a roundabout way tried to take credit for the peace deal too. She did thank Donald Trump, but listen to this.
You know, the coalition really has been out of step with the international community for such a long time. Remember, the coalition opposed a ceasefire that President Trump himself supported. Remember, the coalition has not understood the way in which the international community, that different countries of the world have come together over a year to try and work how it is that we create the conditions for the pathway to peace.
So James talking about the international community and Australia's contribution to what the international community did. It certainly was not to help Israel.
Well, you know, that was an extraordinary piece of rewriting of history by Penny Wong, who clearly wants this to be the Penny Wong peace plan, right? But of course it's not. Look, she's trying to stick the boot into the coalition, and I thought it was Labor that always says, "Oh, the other side is trying to score political points here." Well, I mean, that's precisely what she was doing in that circumstance there. But this idea that this coalition of nations recognizing Palestine somehow created the conditions for peace is completely wrong-headed. This is exactly the sort of expert class foreign policy thinking that has made this conflict, not just, the most recent war between Hamas and Israel, but the war between Hamas and Israel that really arguably started, more than 20 years ago, and really everything that's bedeviled the Middle East since the formation of the State of Israel, that has all been protracted by that sort of foreign policy thinking. And it is completely wrong-headed. What Donald Trump did here is to overturn the entire thing, rewrite the rule book, and recognize something that for people like me who've been traveling to the Middle East, I've been in and out of the Middle East really since the 1990s, and you talk to the people in Arab countries and you realize, Trump realized very quickly there's actually not a huge amount of support for the Palestinian cause as a cause, except as a way to, use it as a lever against the West. And that's what that was all about. He broke that link. He realized, he said, guys, you can make a lot more money and you can have a much better, more peaceful life if you just give that up, cut your ties, stop supporting terrorism, stop supporting Hamas. And, Qatar, well, there was a bit of a stick there with Netanyahu and that strike, but Qatar realized they were in some jeopardy. Iran copped it, of course, the worst with the strike at Fordo, and that was spoken about a lot last night, and it was just miraculous that and what that did. But also other nations, Turkey, NATO ally, wants F-35s, and Trump said, well, little problem with that, and so they suddenly stopped their support for Hamas. Egypt, terrified of the conflict spilling over into Sinai. Hamas was isolated. None of these foreign policy geniuses, no Penny Wong genius ever thought, hey, why don't we cut Hamas's support off rather than acting like the people who are supporting Hamas will be supporting Hamas forever? That's what changed here, and that's what's so important.
Yeah, you're exactly right, James. I think his deal-making has been exceptional to get all the Arab nations on board, to cut that deal with Qatar just overnight, really, and then to take out Iran's nuclear facilities, really weaken Hamas to this point. It's been incredible. Absolute masterclass by Donald Trump, a historic achievement. Now, I do want to talk to you about the Democrats. And it seems as though things aren't all that great between former President Joe Biden and former Vice President Kamala Harris. Now, the Vice President has been forced to admit that Joe Biden is dodging her phone calls. Watch this.
Have you talked to him about it?
I called him earlier.
How's he doing?
I have not talked to him. I just left him a message after I heard the news. I was otherwise on the event at the event.
Look, I don't really blame Joe Biden for not taking her call. What do you make of it, James?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, Joe Biden's got his own problems, and I'm, frankly, not really sure how well he's doing these days. But beyond that, though, this is not the first time Kamala Harris has been, caught out on those phone calls. Remember when she was doing that walk around making a fake phone call thing?
Yeah, for the cameras.
For the cameras.
Social media.
So she couldn't talk or anything like that. This is classic Kamala, and again, this is what we dodged. That is the reality that we could have had as president.
Oh no, I know, and it's really a scary thought, especially when you see where the world is now. You just think, thank God that President Trump survived that
100%.
assassination attempt and was voted in November last year. Yeah, both of them. That's right. Now, but the Democrats are in such a desperate position. They want Kamala to run again.
Do you think that Kamala Harris would be a strong candidate in 2028?
Candidate, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, she was the nominee last time. I think
you would encourage her to run.
I think she would be incredibly strong.
Absolutely. Now, it seems as though the Kamala Harris-Gavin Newsom rivalry...
do it?
That's right. A lot of Republicans...
Yes, Kamala, listen to the man there. He's right. Get your exploratory committee. Run. Get that nomination.
Well, it's interesting because the Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom rivalry is starting to build to a possible 2028 showdown. Now, we know that Kamala Harris really took aim at Gavin Newsom in her book 107 Days, saying that he never returned her phone call. And then, of course, Newsom is leading this anti-Trump movement in California at the moment. So do you see things really heating up between the two of them over the next few years?
Well, no, because I think that really the Kamala thing is, as much as I joke about it, it's not going to, there's no momentum there. Who's going to look at that campaign? Well, maybe the Democrats, but who's going to look at that campaign and say, yeah, that was so good. We missed it by this much. And if we just had a little more time, we might be able to, do something with this and get her over the line. I mean, it's like, no, of course that's not going to happen. Look, the mail is, it's going to be Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, a state that the Democrats have ruined, and they're going to try and get the nomination of the presidency and do the same thing to the United States, what Gavin Newsom did to California. So that'll be a lot of fun for everybody if he were to win. What he does, though, present is, he's very slick. He looks like a politician. You're looking at him on your screen right there. He's very polished. He will say anything to get elected. But I think also what he's going to do is he's already starting to run a national campaign. He's already running a national campaign. And so this is where it's going. He's just going to be so far out ahead. The other people potentially, Pete Buttigieg, he's nowhere. Nobody wants him. It's not because he's gay. It's because he was a terrible transport secretary. He was such a terrible transport secretary that Americans actually knew who the transportation secretary was when he was office. That's how bad he was. No normal person should know that. And people like Pritzker out of Illinois, well, again, he's not going to be there. And although there's a lot of money, the Pritzker family is a billionaire family. He doesn't look the part, let's just say.
Well, it's interesting. I'm not as convinced as you are about Kamala Harris. I'm sure plenty of her staff around her. She's got people convincing her that she almost won. She's still saying it in speeches. She's trying to rewrite history. She completely forgot that Donald Trump won the popular vote, all 7 swing states. But you're right about Gavin Newsom. He'll say anything to get elected. He's flip-flopped on trans issues, and he's got his podcast, and his whole social media strategy at the moment is bizarre, trying to kind of mimic Donald Trump. It just absolutely does not work. It'll be a disaster. But looking at California, Katie Porter is right now the leading Democratic candidate to become California's next governor. And of course, we showed on this program last week the meltdown she had on CBS because a reporter dared to do her job, which is to ask follow-up questions. But now footage has surfaced of Katie Porter blasting a staffer back in 2021. Watch this.
What it showed is if we don't electrify our transportation sector, that we're going to lose more than 500,000 Californians dying prematurely to air pollution and other problems. And the state could lose. Get out of my shot.
I wanted to tell you that that's actually incorrect. It's not that it's electric vehicles. It's that if we don't meet the commitments under the Paris Climate Accord.
Okay, it does. Okay, you also were in my shot before that. Stay out of my shot. Okay, I'm going to start again.
James, she seems charming.
Yeah, she does seem charming, and I just hope somebody has done a welfare check on that staffer and make sure that they're still alive, because Katie Porter, she seems like one of the most unpleasant people in public life, and I have no idea how she's managed to come up to the ranks of the Democrat Party in California to the point where she could potentially be the governor of this really huge and important state. It's nuts. All of the other stories, you just played a little bit there. There was another thing where she refused to go on with an interview because she didn't like the questions. Her ex-husband, dear God, pray for that man, sounds like he had a real time with her. Court documents have revealed that, among other things, she once dumped a steaming bowl of mashed potatoes on his head, wouldn't let him have a mobile phone because she said you would be too effing stupid to use it.
Wow.
How to use it. She's a really deeply unpleasant character here. And I mean, if that was a male and that was a Republican, well, or a human being in any other sort of, circumstance, people say, this person is not somebody who you want anywhere near the levers of power. And, they'd be accused of being abusive and controlling and, all sorts of things, quite fairly, too. And, you don't want those people in public life. And she's just deeply, deeply unpleasant to absolutely everybody. Now, I don't know who the Republicans have got, but I hope they've got somebody good.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And honestly, if she's speaking to her staffer that way while she's recording herself on a Zoom, imagine what else she does in public. It's not a good look at all. Just finally, before I let you go, Trump is, of course, rushing back to DC. So he's there to honour Charlie Kirk tomorrow, because we know that Charlie Kirk would have turned 32 on Tuesday. So it will be the National Day of Remembrance for Charlie Kirk. James, it's going to be another emotional day, I think, for plenty of Americans and people right around the world.
Look, it's fascinating. I mean, not just Charlie Kirk tomorrow, but also I got at the White House at 2:30 a.m., right? And then at 1 o'clock, he's meeting the president of Argentina and doing a thing with him. And then at 4 o'clock, he's doing the medal ceremony for Charlie Kirk. And it's like, this man, does he ever sleep? He just turns Big Macs into freedom. I don't know how he does it. It's just amazing.
Isn't it incredible? I mean, looking at his whirlwind trip of the Middle East, you've got Israel, Egypt, back to DC, and then, as you said, he just still doesn't stop when he's back there. Very different schedule to Joe Biden's schedule for over the last few years. James Morrow.
Or our own prime ministers.
Oh, isn't that true? That's an absolutely fair point. Sky News host James Morrow, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks. See you next time.
Joining us now for all the royal news is News Corp columnist Angela Mollard. Angela, great to see you.
Good to see you.
So Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have been awarded the Humanitarians of the Year award in the United States, and their joint award was handed out hours before Donald Trump was snubbed by Nobel Peace Prize judges despite brokering a peace deal in Gaza. But there's been plenty of backlash around Harry and Meghan actually winning the award. What's happened here?
So it's a mental health charity. I'm actually not going to name it because I think the reason that they are giving this award to Harry and Meghan is to get attention on themselves. I don't think they are worthy of this award. Yes, they've done some work in this space, but as you say, in a week where the American president has brokered peace, when we've seen William sitting down really memorably and with great feeling and emotion and with great depth of experience in the mental health world, and he's had the Heads Together charity for many years. He has deep knowledge of that area. It seems insane that these fly-by-nighters just get a quick award. It doesn't mean anything, but more to the point, the fact they even accept it.
Yes.
Just turn around, turn the attention back on the people involved, as William did with his video with the widow of the woman who lost her husband to suicide. Deeply compelling, heartbreaking story, the sort of story that will draw funds, donations, attention. The fact these two get an award, that doesn't draw any attention.
No. Well done for not naming the charity. But it's interesting, eyebrows are being raised around Meghan Markle's brand as ever. Now, of course, she launched this lifestyle brand after ditching the original name, American Riviera Orchard. And while Meghan has publicly been boasting about selling out of her jams and, some wines in an interview, other wines such as the Sauvignon Blanc that she released last week are still available for purchase, and there are no indications of stock shortages, Angela.
Yeah, I don't think she's selling that much. I mean, initially that first drop with the jams and a few other products, the flower sprinkles and that sort of thing, it was on the back of her show. I think there were so few units up for sale that they sold out instantly because there weren't many.
That's the trick.
Now that she's got the flow of goods coming through, there's just no interest in it. There's not the interest in her, and this is interesting. This is why I think Netflix has done this first look deal with them. Instead of renewing their deal with Meghan and Harry because they think that they are a prize, now it's like, we're going to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Of course, Netflix is bankrolling and is part of the administration of her business. I'm surprised that they aren't driving it harder to get better sales, better results. But let's remember, Meghan's an actress, then she was a duchess, and now she's a businesswoman, and she just goes from one thing to the other. Is she A-grade at any of it?
No, it's a good point. I Don't think she is. Now, Prince Andrew is in the spotlight again. It's been revealed that Prince Andrew, well, he reportedly told Jeffrey Epstein that we're in this together, and also expressed a desire to, quote, play some more, just months after saying that he had severed ties with the convicted pedophile. So the Duke of York is said to have sent the message on February 28, 2011, and in this email obtained by The Sun, it appears that he has contradicted his interview that he gave on BBC's Newsnight back in 2019, the interview we'll never forget, in which he claimed that he had not spoken to Epstein since December 2010. Is that right?
I'd go further than a contradiction. I'd say it's an out-and-out lie. This shows that he contacted Epstein, that he was in this friendship with him deeply, you know, that we're in it together. He tried to paint that his friendship with Epstein was a sort of passing thing. They weren't that close, that sort of thing. Also, the timing of this email. It came the day after the picture was published in the Mail on Sunday of his arm around Virginia Giuffre. Now, if he had an issue with that picture at the time, if he didn't know who that woman was, or has this photo been manipulated, he would have surely have said that to Epstein in that email. He didn't. The fact he didn't draw that to the attention of Epstein the day after it had been published, and then later went on to say, I don't know who she is, I've never met her. The optics on it are terrible. Now, the king has to act, because this is going to affect the monarchy. The fact is they're losing credibility around this. You cannot have Andrew sitting there. He needs to be stripped of his title. He needs to be stripped of Order of the Garter. I don't know how you get him out of that house, because he's got a long lease on it. But if you think King Edward VIII was exiled because he abdicated and wanted to marry a divorcee, the fact that, you know, on the scale of wrongdoing, that is tiny compared to a guy fraternising with a pedophile. Andrew needs to be exiled.
Now, King Frederik has been called out by the press. Now, it's interesting. Tell me more about this, because even the best kind of royal PR spin can't stop some of the reports. What's he been called out for?
I know, and I don't want to call him out, because I love Mary and Fred. They're gorgeous. He's lazy. Frankly, he hasn't been doing the job. And so the Danish press have been saying, you know, he's counting up his holidays, saying he's always taking mini breaks. He's had 45 days off this year. And while they don't target Mary, because she's very hardworking, there's basically how much work is he doing? And when he's not, of course, being king, if he's off being somewhere else, it falls to Christian, his son, who's a teenager, or his octogenarian mother. And they're making the point that, you know, you've got the top role, mate, you've got to do the job. Look, he has, to be fair, always said that timeouts are very important to him. He has never really sought this role. He is much more, a beta style monarch, whereas Mary's the one that has the credentials to be, you know, a magnificent queen. So I just think the optics are interesting on it, because the Danish press are generally pretty in favour of the royals.
Yes, and now let's talk about King Charles. He's saved the World Conker Championships on the eve of its 60th anniversary. What more can you tell us about this?
I love this story. So the conkers in Europe at the moment aren't big enough. They haven't been able to source big enough conkers. On his Windsor estate, the king has nice, big, fat, chunky conkers. He's heard about this crisis in the conker world. He's donated 300 conkers. They're now being kept for the finals. The Conker Championships are thrilled to have the royal support. I'm not suggesting that the king went out and personally picked these conkers himself, but I do love this story. It just shows. And look, the royalty, they didn't publicise this fact. It's the Conker Championships that have said, oh my gosh, we've got these conkers from the royals. And
brilliant.
I love it. I just think these are the things where the monarchy is built up, because it's such goodwill. It's attuned to the people. And if you continue to be attuned and responsive to ordinary, genuine people, not like the Andrew issues, those sorts of things, if you focus on that, that's where you're going to sustain, where you're going to have that longevity of monarchy, and you're going to leave a legacy to William.
Just finally, in the world of entertainment, Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau, they've now been putting their romance on display. Photos obtained by Fox News Digital show that the couple were spotted sharing some PDA while on board Katy Perry's yacht. It's pretty, while in Santa Barbara last week. Also pretty funny to say, to note, some people are pointing out that the yacht would also be chewing up some carbon, something that Justin Trudeau may be being called a hypocrite for. But what did you make of this?
I'm deeply saddened, because Trudeau is my political crush.
Sorry,
sorry. I know it's shallow, but I don't imagine he is yours. But look, funny. I love these couples, these unexpected couples that are coming out of the woodwork. Trudeau and Katy Perry, Elizabeth Hurley and Billy Ray Cyrus, Liam Neeson and Pamela Anderson. And they're these repartnerings that you don't expect, but especially this time because we're at the axis of politics and pop culture. Like, it's a really interesting, I don't know how it'll go. It's interesting, you know, will he want that level of attention? How do they drive their different brands side by side? But also there was a bit of a gropey action on the boat where he was grabbing well, look, they're together, so I suppose you wouldn't call it gropey. That's a bit unfair, but it's kind of not a look that a former Prime Minister wants to project, I wouldn't have thought. Particularly if you want to do things like someone like Tony Blair has done and you have a really large presence on the world stage, you kind of don't want to be on a boat photographed
I'm not sure.
bum.
I feel like he won't mind the attention or the spotlight, but we'll wait and see how it goes. Angela Mollard, thank you so much. And that is Power Hour. Thank you for your company. We'll see you tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe to Sky News Australia on YouTube.